call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 171 of the Standing Committee on Finance. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format. I'd like to remind participants of the following points. Please wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. All comments should be addressed through the chair. Members, please raise your hand if you wish to speak, whether participating in person or via Zoom. The clerk and I will manage the speaking order as best we can. Pursuant to Standing Order 108(2) and the motion adopted on Thursday, September 26, 2024. The committee is meeting to discuss tax debt write-offs and carousel tax fraud scheme and other issues involving claims. Now is my honor and pleasure and privilege to welcome the Minister of National Revenue, the Honorable Marie-Claude Bibeau. So welcome, Minister, and I'm sure everybody's eager to hear your opening remarks before we get to members' questions. And I know you are joined by a number of officials that will be with you now and then through to the end of the meeting.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Indeed, I'm accompanied today by Bob Hamilton, the Commissioner, and Deputy Commissioners. We're pleased to be able to discuss fraud schemes, the tax write-off process, and the integrity of the ARC. Protecting the integrity and fairness of Canada's tax system is a top priority for the Government of Canada and the agency. The agency is committed to combating tax evasion and tax avoidance, both domestically and internationally.
By the Government of Canada have enabled the agency to expand the scope of its audits, improve its comprehensive data sources, and enhance its analytical approaches. It has been able to hire specialized resources. In addition, this funding has enabled the agency to leverage strategic alliances with its domestic and international partners. The agency is therefore in a much better position to detect and deter the most serious cases of non-compliance, including abusive schemes in Canada's goods and services tax and harmonized sales tax system, such as the carousel schemes. This deliberate focus on willful non-compliance enables the agency to support its mandate to make sure that the tax system is fair for all. Il en va de même pour le programme.
The same is true for the agency's collection program, which, through innovation and the use of analytics and technology, also ensures a high level of results. With respect to debt write-offs, it is absolutely important to note that the vast majority of accounts receivable are indeed collected over time. In addition, a write-off occurs when all of the agency's collection measures have been exhausted. And I can assure you that the agency's collection program is very rigorous before it gets to that stage. Having said that, in most cases, the debt remains in the taxpayer's account. As soon as the taxpayer's financial situation improves, active collection measures are then relaunched.
That in Canada, as abroad, all government institutions are currently under significant pressure in terms of services to the public. In fact, it is mainly the agency's contact centers that are experiencing significant pressure. In recent years, the agency has faced a record number of calls, largely due to the increase in the number of benefits and credits implemented to support the Canadian population during and since the COVID-19 pandemic. This increase also includes services for people who are new to Canada. These people need a higher level of support to understand their new tax obligations and to learn how to access benefits and credits, such as the Goods and Services Tax Credit, the Canada Carbon Rebate, and obviously the Canada Child Benefit. Cela dit,
that said, the agency can improve its service delivery. Concrete solutions are already on the table, starting with the increased implementation of self-service options that are expected to help relieve the pressure on contact centers. I will conclude by reminding you that the Canada Revenue Agency is a world-class tax and benefits administration. Its vision is to be helpful, fair, and trustworthy, in keeping with its service philosophy that puts people first. Furthermore, in the spirit of tax justice, which is a Canadian value, it is rigorously committed to ensuring that everyone, without exception, pays what they owe to the government's coffers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Minister Bibeau.
We'll move to members' questions. So in the first round, members, each party will have up to 6 minutes to ask questions. We are starting with MP Chambers for the first 6 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, nice to see you again. When we last spoke at Ethics, we talked about write-offs came up, and I asked about the whether you were able to disclose the largest write-off that happened last year. Is that are you able to disclose that today?
You're well aware of the CRA Act and Clause 241 that forces us to be very cautious. It forces us to be very cautious and make sure that information that we make public or put in the public domain does not allow us to identify, be it directly or indirectly, any taxpayer. So that is why we had to group together this information before making it public.
My concern is that in 2019, your predecessor and the CRA made that figure available to the public. And then just last year, you also released that figure to Senator Down in an order paper question through the Senate. So I'm confused as to why all of a sudden now there's some policy change on not being able to disclose to Canadians the largest single write-off to an individual or only a corporate taxpayer we're asking. We're not asking for somebody's personal information. We're not even asking for the name of the company, although I think that would be well within our rights to start asking for. Is it like at one point it was $133 million in 2019. I assume the reason is it's such a big number that we don't want to disclose it. Is that fair?
C'est pas une question de volonté ou de.
It's not a matter of willingness or unwillingness to make the information available. It's really following the advice of our lawyers and tax experts who feel that if we were to disclose this information in detail, you could identify the taxpayer in question, and we can't take that risk.
I understand that. As a lawyer, I understand they sometimes like to give the advice the client wants to hear. I find it hard to understand why a couple of years ago, even 1 year ago, that this figure was publicly available, and yet today it is not. And I understand we're not going to get that today, but we will continue pushing for that. Minister, the Globe and Mail had mentioned earlier in September that write-offs for last year totaled about $4.9 billion. But that was before the end of the year had finished. I'm curious if you could tell the committee what's the total write-offs for last year now that we have the final books closed for the year.
Alors, pour l'année
Well, for 2023-24, the definitive figures will be tabled with the public accounts. I can give you the latest figures. So the amount for write-offs will be $4.3 billion.
For taxes, like is this corporate write-offs, personal write-offs altogether, or what's included in that number?
Ce sont
all write-offs combined, be they individuals or corporations or trusts.
And you're saying we'll get that number in the public accounts, I suppose, on Monday. Okay, and that's the number we'll see in the public accounts?
Oui.
Yes.
I saw that CRA had identified in a press release they had noted about $1.1 billion through audits that should have been examined for carousel schemes, GST schemes in 2017-18. So this predates you, Minister. But I'm curious, have you been able to collect any of that money yet?
Le dilemme avec ça, ou la
The dilemma with this and the complexity of this question is that all our collection efforts are done for various debts to the agency, be it individuals, companies, tax debts, or carousel schemes. So the system doesn't allow us to identify the result of collection of carousel schemes versus all collections done by the agency.
Since we're all also talking about write-offs, I'm curious about the underused housing tax. My understanding is that the CRA has spent actually more money on administration than it's assessed to collect. The last figure from an order paper question was that the CRA assessed $49 million owing in underused housing tax. How much of that has been collected? When has any of that been written off?
Oui, absolument. Puis,
Yes, absolutely. The last time we checked revenue generated by this underused housing tax, it was higher than the administration cost. That was the first year. The year isn't over yet, and even at this time, we collected more than the administrative cost. So at the end of the year, it'll certainly be higher. It will increase as well in coming years, because when we have a new program like this, to implement a risk assessment system, we have to do a sampling to refine our risk management system. So
On the underused housing tax?
est-ce que would you just repeat?
Have you written off any amounts owing under that underused housing tax?
J'en doute, mais encore une.
I doubt it, but once again, I don't have the details of these write-offs by category, but it's so recent that it's improbable, because we take some time. Before we write off something, a lot of effort is deployed.
Chambers, and now to MP Baker, please.
Madame la Ministre, merci d'être ici.
Thank you for being here, Madam Minister. I'd like to put a few questions to you. I imagine that the number of taxpayers who call the agency for whatever reason grows because of the growth in population, I imagine. There are challenges because of technology, identity theft. This makes it more complicated to identify the reasons why citizens are contacting the agency. So in that context, what is the agency doing so that it doesn't get overwhelmed and to continue to improve customer service? Good question. Indeed, our call centers have been under a great deal of pressure in the past few years. For the past few years, the agency administers more and more programs, more and more tax credits. There were some during COVID. That was far more significant. All that created an increase in the volume of calls to the agency. So there's greater complexity in the calls too, because we're administering a larger number of programs. As I said in my opening remarks, when you have to deal with people filing their taxes for the first time, answering their questions is longer too. And there's the whole new reality of cybersecurity. So the time that an agent spends on the phone to identify a person means that the calls are longer. For all those reasons mean that there's been greater pressure on the agency in the past few years. So we've implemented an optimization program that as soon as there's 30-minute wait on the line, there's a system that means that people are already waiting, get offered to get a call back the same day. New calls that come in get offered self-service options, or they're asked to call back at a time where lines are less busy. We've lengthened our service hours from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., even on Saturdays. And we have time differences in Canada that help us provide a longer time span. We've noted that the satisfaction rate is much higher now. Because satisfaction isn't the problem, it's getting the line. Those were our first efforts, and we have other programs that are being developed when it comes to new technology, artificial intelligence. All that's in development right now. Okay, I have a request from my constituents. In my riding, there are many seniors, more than average, in Canada. And I find that my senior constituents often want more traditional service by telephone, let's say. I appreciate that you're deploying all those efforts to innovate and through new means to offer service to Canadians, but I'd simply ask you and your team, when you go forward with that work, don't forget people who need to use traditional means of communication. That's not a question, it's just a little request. Many things were said recently about debt write-offs by the CRA. Some have insinuated that these were arbitrary decisions. Could you clarify the steps that lead to a write-off and indicate who takes part in this designation? Yes, absolutely. At the outset, I could say that I don't participate in any way, shape, or form. There's no political interference. I'm not informed at all. This is a power of the minister officially, but it's delegated to the commissioner and the deputy commissioner according to the amount of the debt. Of course, before we decide to write off a debt, there's a whole process. There's a collection process in many different steps that takes place. That lasts a few years usually. And before we write it off to bad debt, before we get to a write-off, there's a whole process that must comply with the generally recognized accounting principle. There's the CRA's procedures. It has to comply with the Public Finance Act, Bankruptcy Act, and so forth. So it's strictly regulated. Of course, the Auditor General will also review the decision taken by the CRA. So before a decision is made to write it off, a great deal of effort is made. The age of the account, too, how long it's been in the solvency of the person in debt or the company in debt. We always look at different schemes in order to improve and avoid them. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Baker.
Marie, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Minister, it's a great pleasure to see you before the committee. It's highly appreciated. I would like to salute Mr. Hamilton and the whole team accompanying you today. I have one question that's rather technical about Quebec. That means recreational vehicle dealerships. You're aware of this file. Right now, the CRA is retroactively asking for 8% of the Ontario tax imported and sold in Quebec, but that went through the U.S. Ontario customs. That goes back to 2012. It means $50 million. Could you please settle this whole problem? We examined the situation, and we were made familiar with it for a certain sector of activity. And in general, what we've concluded is it's the same process for taxes for any product whatsoever. Therefore, I have to be careful not to get into anything too specific here, but the correct information was disseminated in that sector to make sure that everyone understood it properly. Generally speaking, it was properly applied throughout Canada. I can't talk about a specific case. You understand my dilemma, but I can assure you that when there are situations like that, people from the agency work with this industry to find the best way to solve the problem. But in the future, the system is working and people are well informed so that things work out first and foremost. Thank you for that answer. Of course, that represents $50 million. That has a great impact on the liquidities of these dealerships. They have to reimburse that $50 million before they can have deductions and get it back. That means $50 million not in their pocket. Their margin isn't very wide anyway, and the price of RVs they sell is very high. So I'm pleased to hear that in the future this will be settled, but please, you and your team, please find a solution to this as quickly as possible. We've been involved in this for more than a year, so thank you. Now, I'll go on to a completely different topic. I get the impression that this fall, be it on the Journal de Montréal or Radio-Canada, there was some news article about the CRA, new schemes, new frauds that were discovered. You seem to be attacking whistleblowers and saying, stop denouncing this situation to the media, both you and the agency. I see you react there, so I'll listen to how you justify this reaction. Well, exactly. You have to make a distinction here. When it comes to whistleblowers, there are situations where it's necessary, but in the context of the agency, doesn't mean it could never be necessary, but you have to be careful given the context in which we work at the CRA. We are a target of choice. We have a lot of personal information, financial information that's sensitive. So we try to manage that information very rigorously. We make sure that employees don't have any more access to information than they need. There are constant audits that have to be done. We have a duty of loyalty toward the government and the agency. So it's important to remind agency employees what their responsibilities are, things that you have to respect. Now, having said that, there was this whole other file. Employees always have an opportunity to share their fears, dissatisfaction within the agency, be it with their supervisor or higher up. There's also the Integrity Commissioner. There are all other entities outside the agency that they can refer to. What I also believe is a possibility is that when employees blow the whistle on a situation they feel is unacceptable, they're not necessarily informed of all the effort deployed by the agency to remedy the situation. There are almost 60,000 employees in the agency, so the teams working on these fraud schemes don't always share this with their team at a meeting at the end of the week. So I believe that perhaps these people were taken seriously. The work is being done, but the agency's efforts to avoid schemes, to fight against these schemes, is not something that's disseminated. We don't want to give tricks to people who don't already know them. And I think it's a matter of communication where things get lost. Okay, thank you, because I was very concerned with every news article that came out, and when there are services that are criticized in my constituency office, but I think the work of these whistleblowers is very important to the health of our democracy. We have to have transparency about this, and it seems to me that in Mr. Hamilton's messages or your own, Are you really attacking the fraudsters or the whistleblowers? That's the impression one would get through the media. My time's almost up, but I would have another request for you. My colleague Jean Denis, who's on parental leave right now, wrote to you with a request. 6 months have passed. There are many other factors that came to play. You were citing Article 231 of the Income Tax Act under Clause 4. You're given the power as minister to appoint an investigator who's external to shed light on a matter. Giving all the revelations in the media in the past year, particularly in the fall, that is something I would reiterate in order to shed light on it. You're saying, yes, there are teams that are developing strategies against fraud, but seems to me it keeps accumulating and it's not resorbing. You're the only one with that power. Do you think you can use it? Thank you. Thank you.
You have to move on, and yet we are moving to MP Davies, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Minister, for being with us. Minister, as we know, the CRA approved $4.9 billion in write-offs for the 2023-24 fiscal year. That was the highest amount over the past 9 fiscal years that were disclosed. The breakdowns indicate that the value of the write-offs is heavily weighted towards a small number of large cases. I'm wondering if you could explain for us what factors explain the increase in CBA write-offs for that year, and can you explain why the value of the write-offs is so heavily weighted towards large cases?
Alors, c'est sûr que la valeur.
Well, of course, the value of write-offs will increase. More revenue increases, the chance is good that the write-offs will increase too. I did a little research, and when you compare the past 10 years, you see that the revenue that go through the agency went from $376 billion to $662 billion. That's an increase of 76%. So write-offs increased from $3.3 billion to $4.3 billion. So that's an increase of 31%. So when you compare that, you see that we have far more revenue, but 1/3 more write-offs. So that shows you that we take this seriously and we perform quite well in collections.
Now, in November, 600 CRA employees working in revenue collections and audit were informed that their contracts were being prematurely terminated. Some lost their jobs as of November 29th, and all affected employees will be terminated by tomorrow, December 13th. Given the write-offs last year for uncollected debts, can you explain how laying off hundreds of revenue collection and audit workers will improve the situation?
Alors, c'est sûr qu'au niveau.
Well, the CRA is a very big team that grew, given programs that grew a lot during COVID and is coming back down to a more normal level. And how can I put this? There are certain programs that are coming to an end, like COVID recovery programs, or the recovery of COVID programs, if you would, phasing out. We're trying to finalize that. So that workload has gone down. That's one explanation why we'll have fewer people in the field. The work is cyclical in the agency. We can expect that during tax season we hire more people. In the summer, it's a very busy period too. We have the renewal of all kinds of benefits then. So there's always fluctuation in the staffing of the agency, but we are aware that in the past few years we had unusual staffing levels, let's say.
So are you saying, Minister, that all 600 of those 6RA employees are people who were hired only to deal with those sort of temporary programs that are now coming to a close?
Ces gens étaient tous.
These people were all on determinate contracts. They were not permanent employees or indeterminate employees. There are some permanent employees that occupied a temporary position and that are going back to their original incumbent position, their permanent position. There were no cuts in permanent jobs.
Okay. I'm curious, Minister, if you know, for every dollar spent on audit and revenue collection, how much is returned to the federal treasury?
Ça, c'est quelque chose qu'il faudrait faire une...
That's something we'd have to do research on, unless one of my colleagues has a quick answer. I don't have a quick answer, I'm sorry. Mr. Commissioner, would you like to answer?
Respond to that in a general way, just to note that in times we get resources from Finance Canada through a budget, and we have a rough rule of thumb that would say for every dollar we get to spend on increased auditing compliance, we would return, you know, somewhere between $3-4. So it's always a ratio greater than 1. If you give us $1, we'll return more. That can depend on the type of activity that those people are engaged in or the technology that they're using. But, you know, roughly if you thought of 3-1 or 4-1, that would probably be in a good ballpark figure.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hamilton. It sounds like a good investment. And Marc Briere, the president of the Union of Taxation Employees, said the following in November. He said, we strongly oppose these job cuts. Just to give you an idea, a collection officer collects between $1 to $5 million per year, while their salaries range between $65,000 to $73,000 per year. It doesn't make sense to lose hundreds of millions yearly. It certainly doesn't help to balance the government's books. Would you not agree that if we have uncollected debts, and there's certainly more, I don't think you would assert that there isn't more money out there that audits and collections would return to the Treasury. Doesn't it make sense to be investing in increased audit and collection services at this point in time? Not cutting?
Ça me fait plaisir de savoir.
I'm pleased to know that you would support an increase in the CRA's operating budget. But once again, it depends in which section of these employees work. I'm saying we, it's really human resources that attributes these positions as well as possible so that the CRA can meet all its obligations, be it service delivery or managing tax money. Thank you.
So, members, we are moving to our second round of questions, and timings are a little different with this round, but we're starting with MP Howland for the first 5 minutes.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, your temporary 2-month GST tax trick, according to small businesses, is confusing, cumbersome, and complex. They're scrambling right now at the busiest time of the year to change their POS systems because of this policy that was dropped on them. It's not only costly, but it's very confusing. And it's not very clear through your department or finance of what's included and what's not. Why were businesses not given more of a heads up?
Comme vous le savez,
As you know, the Department of Finance works with the fiscal policy. We administer those policies. What I can tell you is that the agency's team that works to respond to companies, specifically on tax issues, was mobilized to be able to answer those questions. But to our surprise, very pleasantly, our phone lines were not overburdened. So I think the information available on the website of the agency is very detailed. To wit, the line that answers questions was not overwhelmed.
Respectfully, when this tax trick ends, that's when tax season starts. So there might be a lot more questions afterwards. How are you going to handle that?
j'ai confiance qu'on a...
Well, I trust that we have all the mechanisms and teams that are competent to do so well in place when it comes to the tax holiday for the next 2 months. All the information is available on the website, and once again, our teams that are tasked with answering questions did not get as many calls as we anticipated. So I guess it's clear enough.
Minister, respectfully, there's small businesses that are reaching out that are saying that the policy is very confusing. In fact, there's they don't know with Lego sets which ones are included and which ones aren't. How do you answer for that?
Encore une fois, on a un service à l'agence pour
Once again, we have a service to answer questions from these people, so I invite them to call our experts to obtain more information if they feel that what's available on our website is insufficient.
The difference is why there's some toys included and some not. This is a policy set by your government, correct?
absolument que c'est une politique
Absolutely, it's a policy of our government. And when it comes to the administration of tax, I think all the details are available on the website. And there are officers, professionals who are prepared to answer specific questions.
Minister, as we've heard in this committee, more than $4 billion of write-offs were given to large corporations and fraudsters. Will you grant the same type of latitude to these small businesses that will most likely make mistakes during this confusing and complex GST tax trick change that your government implemented?
Il n'y a aucun rapport entre les deux.
There's no connection between the two. When you're talking about write-offs, that's really because we've gone through a very rigorous process over many years often, efforts to recover the money over years, and every company, all companies have to deal with the CRA in accordance with their situation. I trust that the teams in the CRA are well trained to respond to them and, for example, come up with agreements for reimbursement that are consistent with their capacity to pay. So we can show some humanity and flexibility when we try to collect a debt.
I have just, I believe, a minute left. The Prime Minister used the Finance Minister to blow through the $40 billion deficit guardrail that she had set in the previous budget. According to the PBO, it's already over by $6 billion. Now that he's done with her, he may replace her with the de facto Finance Minister, Carbon Tax Carney. I've just a simple question for you. Wouldn't you agree that this being done by the Prime Minister is absolutely disgusting? Because that's how we all feel.
Je rejette complètement.
I completely reject the premise of your question. I don't think that's a question that you should be putting to the Minister of National Revenue or any minister of the government.
So it's clear that no one wants to stand up for the Finance Minister.
Tout le monde est prêt à se tenir aux côtés.
I stand with the Minister of Finance. Our whole team has great solidarity with the Minister of Finance and the Prime Minister. I have no doubt about that.
MP Hallen, and now to MP Sorbara for the next 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, everyone. Welcome, Minister. I'd first like to start off and say thank you to the CRA and all the Canada Revenue employees that during the global pandemic delivered at an accelerated and never seen before pace a number of programs to Canadian families, to Canadian individuals and businesses. For example, Commissioner Hamilton, I know, and I'm looking at the Canada Emergency Wage Subsidy, 3.5 million applications, 460,000 unique approved applicants, over $100 billion was delivered to Canadian businesses, supporting over 5 million workers, and that was delivered in record time by the CRA. It allowed us to recover and come out of the pandemic, the global pandemic, faster than almost nearly any other country in the world. And we all know the human consequences that was paid during the pandemic, but we also know that the Government of Canada and the Canada Revenue employees were there, working hard, tirelessly, I would say. At the time, I was a parliamentary secretary at CRA at the time, or for the agency. So I wanted to say thank you to the CRA and to all of its employees. When we look back in history, in decades or a few short years, we will know this will be a textbook case on the efficiency of delivering government services and benefits to Canadians at their time of need. We were there for Canadians. We had their backs, and we always do so. I will say we are coming up to tax filing season in a few months, and to Commissioner Hamilton and to the Minister, We've automated a number of benefits. What I mean by that is as we know, once Canadians file their taxes, they automatically receive the benefits. And I wanted to get a comment on how important that is in terms of being able to minister to reduce poverty levels, especially with the Canada Workers Benefit, and deliver those benefits to Canadians. And Commissioner Hamilton, do we have a rough idea of how many benefits and credits Canadians receive through filing their taxes?
Merci. Effectivement,
Thank you for thanking the CRA team. You were part of it. I think that we did extraordinary work. The team did extraordinary work, especially during COVID. Yes, that is a priority of our government to help the most vulnerable.
the most proud of is the Canada Child Benefit. I remember when we came, that was one of our first decisions, and we decided to put all the money that we had for children, for family, in terms of benefits and also credits, all in the same bucket, and put additional money on it, and then it is being distributed on a wage-based approach. And this is why the agency is now responsible for this, because it's wage-based approach as for many other benefits. One effort that is very interesting is the le PCBMI, CVITP, the community volunteer program. So you know these volunteers who do the taxes for people who need assistance. And this is another program that we can be very proud of. And at the end, only these volunteers, they allow these vulnerable people to get up to $2 billion in benefit. So I'm just talking about this program. So maybe, Monsieur le Commissaire, vous avez plus de détails.
Commissioner, you may have more details.
Thank you for the kind words. I know all of the agency employees appreciate the kudos that we get from time to time on how we delivered during that very, very stressful time. As we moved into the compliance end of things, maybe some of the halo has come off a bit, but we're very proud of what we were able to do. On your question, yes, the automation of benefits is part of a move at the CRA. We're trying to make it easier for people to get the benefits. You do have to file a tax return, and so how do we make it as simple as possible? And it could be automatic. You don't have to do anything, like we just did with the carbon rebate for small businesses. They don't have to file anything. We just send that out. Can't do that in every case, but we're doing that where we can. And also what we're doing through the CVITP program that the minister talked about, but other efforts, is just trying to make sure people are aware that these benefits are out there. And if they file their return, they'll become eligible for them, because, you know, there are people, a reducing number, but that don't know about it, don't know to file their return, so that they can get access to those benefits. So there's a big amount of awareness and that we're trying to do to make sure that people do file to get these benefits. You asked a number about quantum. We issue over $50 billion of benefits per year. And I think that's over 150 million payments. So it's a big business. That's an area where the agency has grown over the last couple of decades, from just dabbling in benefits to now we have a number of them in the hundreds, federal, and we also administer them for the provinces.
Thank you, sir. Barra, and that is the time. And now to MP Samari, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Minister, I'll put the same question to you, but I'll ask you another one, and you can answer both. The one that was already put to you, do you think that you can use your powers to appoint an external investigator to shed light on what's going on? And another subject, I'm very sensitive to the question of the illegal use of tax havens. It's immoral too, but it's illegal. When you look at what the agency manages to do compared to European countries, the IRS in the U.S., or even Revenue Quebec, when there are information leaks, it's really under par, in my opinion. It's complex, but one of the issues is that when there are prosecutions, the agency wins at first level, but these people who use these schemes appeal the decision and are facing judges who are not specialists, and the judge may have some doubt because he's not an expert in this, and he allows the person prosecuted win, and we shouldn't have to fight these kinds of schemes in this way. Do you or the agency have any solutions to solve this problem when things go to appeal so that you have a better success rate? So my first question is external investigator, and my second is about appeals courts decisions. Well, first of all, when it comes to the external investigator, I can tell you that I don't feel the need for it because I am informed of all the efforts we deploy. I don't think the Ombudsman or Auditor General. Once again, I think that we don't make all our efforts public, of course, in our fight against tax evasion or tax avoidance or schemes. Maybe people don't know that we do as much as we actually do. I'm confident that we do a great deal, that our teams are specialized and continue to specialize because fraudsters are very creative, aren't they? They can afford a lot, too. So that's why we join international groups. In fact, the commissioner presides an international table at the OECD on the question of international finance. Not long ago, just a month ago, we welcomed the G5. So we're very active, even on the international scene, in order to share best practices, share information when new fraud schemes appear. So I'm quite confident that we have a very competent and active team, not only domestically, but internationally as well. When it comes to the courts and higher courts, I have problems answering you in any specific way. Thank you, Mr. Sainte-Marie. Mr. Davies, please.
Thank you, Minister. Do you have an estimate of how much money annually is lost to Canada's Treasury due to offshore tax havens?
Par définition, je pense que si c'est perdu,
By definition, if we lost it, we don't have the details, but we work very hard. And as I said, we work with our Canadian partners here, of course, various organizations and federal institutions, financial institutions, private ones, with our partner countries abroad. Maybe the commissioner could add something to that.
Maybe I'll just add one point. As the minister indicated, it can quite often be difficult to know how much you're not getting, but we do have estimates of that. We produce a document called the Tax Gap, which looks at a number of areas of the tax system and how much are we collecting relative to what we think we should. Now, there's a methodology, and people can debate over that, but we do try to estimate that. I don't have the number that you're specifically looking for on my fingertips, but I'd be happy to send to the committee our document on that, which we repeat every few years. But I would say it's an estimate based on a methodology, but we do try to, and then use that to help direct or influence our compliance efforts and where we want to direct.
Thank you. I appreciate receiving that number. According to an October article from CBC News, at the height of this year's tax season, CRA discovered that hackers had obtained confidential data used by H&R Block Canada. The hackers used the company's confidential credentials to get unauthorized access into hundreds of Canadians' personal CRA accounts. They changed direct deposit information, submitted false returns, and they pocketed millions of dollars in bogus refunds. The crisis prompted the CRA to contact the Office of Revenue Minister, but the public was never alerted to the scheme. Why was the public not alerted about this breach, and what is being done to improve transparency and prevent future cyber attacks like this?
Merci.
Thank you. Well, first of all, The information that allowed fraudsters to get into citizens' account was information obtained outside the CRA system. So it's not the CRA system that was hacked. It's in confidential information of certain individuals that was obtained outside of the agency's system. It wasn't even a single fraudster that penetrated the system, a multitude of them, small cases. The first thing we do at the CRA when there's a situation like that is that the individual concerned is informed. Their account is blocked, the individual is informed, and then we do all possible research to get back up to the fraudster and see to what extent the confidential information of the individual was compromised. Does it compromise them more broadly, or is it specific to the CRA? We work to help them. We also try to trace the fraudster. Now, why isn't this information made public as was done in the past in other situations? Well, here we're facing specific cases. This wasn't a risk that was at large or a general risk to the population, so we did not feel it was relevant or pertinent to make that information public. But every citizen involved was immediately informed and their account was blocked. Thank you. Thank you, MP Davies.
MP Kelly.
Mr. Chair, Minister, in response to my order paper question of this past spring, you refused to disclose the number, disclose the amount of the largest single tax write-off. This is in contrast to previous practice. Did you order your officials not to disclose that number?
Absolument pas. C'est une décision qui est prise.
This is a decision made by the team after an evaluation of the situation, an assessment of the risk in the sense that we have to be very careful not to communicate information that could directly or indirectly identify a taxpayer. So I did not influence this in any way.
This is in contrast to previous practice. So up until this year, when questions like this have been asked through the same method, through the order paper, you have disclosed the single largest number, but you did not this year. This absence of transparency leaves people to wonder why. They wonder if there's a particular entity being protected, and they want to know how much the single largest write-off was. You've got, according to media reports, 11 entities combined for over $1 billion in write-offs. We're left to wonder, how big was the biggest one?
Je comprends très bien votre question.
I understand your question perfectly, but unfortunately, because we have an obligation to protect the information of individuals and not disclose, whether directly or indirectly, any situation of a company,
then infer that this was actually an individual and not a corporation.
Non, un contribuable, j'aurais dû.
No, I should have said a taxpayer in the broadest sense, be it a company, a trust, or an individual.
Watching this committee hearing will conclude that you are more interested in protecting the privacy of someone that has failed to pay almost certainly in excess of $100 million in taxes owing, rather than being transparent with Canadians.
When you're in government, you have duties that you don't have when you're in opposition, right? I have a duty under the law. I am obligated under the law to protect the information of all taxpayers. That's not my personal choice, but if I wanted to disclose more, we'd have to change the law, because I don't feel like going to jail over this.
Question was not the question that I asked that you refused to answer on the order paper, and that you also refused to answer when Mr. Chambers asked, was simply the number. So we will not ask you who didn't pay. Will you tell Canadians how much the single largest write-off was in this past year?
Je peux pas communiquer.
I can't communicate that information because we feel that by telling you, you could directly or indirectly identify the taxpayer.
People may be left to speculate whether you disclose the number or not. But, Minister, there's an alarming trend underway here. The amount in aggregate that you disclosed is unprecedented. You have, according to media reports, 11 tax filers combining for over $1 billion in write-offs, suggests a series of exceptionally large write-offs. How many full-time equivalents are there right now for the employee count of the CRA?
How many employees? About 58,000 in the agency, about 58,000.
Army of 58,000 tax collectors. The Canadian Army has only 33,899 full-time active personnel. Your army of tax collectors is enormous, Minister, and we are seeing an alarming trend of write-downs and failures to collect taxes. This is troubling for Canadians who pay their taxes, and your average filer doesn't have the ability to fight and be able to resist your tax collectors. It's the larger players that seem to be having their taxes forgiven.
C'est complètement faux et je vais vous.
That's totally false, and I can demonstrate that with figures. When you look at the revenue collected by the agency 10 years ago, it was $376 billion. Today, we're collecting $662 billion. And when you look at write-offs, the money which, in your opinion, we're letting go after a great deal of effort and not being able to recover it, used to be $3.3 billion, now it's $4.3 billion. So that means that in 10 years, revenue has increased by 76%, whereas write-offs have increased by 31%. So I think that that's an eloquent example of the performance of the CRA's team. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kelly.
This will be our final questioner of the minister, and that's MP Thompson, please.
Thank you. Well, I'm glad I get this opportunity. Welcome. I want to start with statistics and how we've been talking about that. In 2024, the Global Financial Crime Report stated that financial global crime is a $3.1 trillion problem. So clearly, this is, as you referenced, Commissioner, a global challenge. It is international, and obviously the fraudsters are incredibly sophisticated. I want to put a plug in for my riding. There is a company, Verifin, in St. John's, Newfoundland, started a very small company, cybersecurity, has grown in a tremendous way. It is now NASDAQ Verifin. They do this work around the globe, cybersecurity, enhancing investigator AI capacity. Minister, I don't know if it's you or the commissioner, in terms of the international groups that you meet with, and we know this is a global problem, what's happening international, because the capacity within an organization is limited in light of the sophistication of the crimes that are being committed. Is there a way to partner with organizations that are leading edge globally to be able to maximize our ability to really deal with this very serious problem?
We do definitely, but I'll let you go.
Yes, I'm happy to respond to that, Mr. Chair. You're right. It is a global issue, and the last meeting of this group that I chair, which is the commissioners from all of basically the OECD countries, the OECD UK. I mean, it was the number one topic on people's mind is the growing cybersecurity fraud, And interestingly, one of the issues is, as all of the tax jurisdictions are trying to become more digitalized, faster with service, we're actually, opening the door a little bit to allowing people to come and take advantage of that speed. So that's a trade-off that we're all thinking about collectively. So what are we doing about it? We've done a few good things. We actually have instituted automatic exchange of information where we're sharing information among ourselves about taxpayers in our jurisdictions, so that if we see something going that looks a little bit funny, we can get that information from another jurisdiction, because usually when somebody is trying to evade or avoid taxes, they're not just doing it in Canada, they're doing it in other places. So we can exchange information to get a better handle on what's going on with some of these large multinational groups, which can be hard to figure out just on your own. So we're working together on that. On the issue of financial crime, the minister mentioned that we had the J5, which is a group of 5 countries. I'll probably forget one: Australia, UK, Canada, Netherlands, US. No, I didn't forget one. All get together in terms of our tax criminal enforcement groups, and that's good. That's good for us to share, the best practices. What are we seeing? Again, because something that's happening in one country is probably happening in another one. And we've also created a separate little group or a subgroup that involves the large financial institutions and other experts in each of those countries. So we can get together because part of what makes us work well is our partnerships with financial institutions and others that aren't necessarily tax administrations, to get a better feel for what's going on. And it's all necessary. Fraud still happens, and we're fighting it, and we think we're doing lots of good things, but there's people that are very dedicated to committing fraud, and we have to make sure we do everything on our side to try to stay ahead of them.
You have a minute.
Good. Another question. Thank you for that. Remember NASDAQ Verifin. But Minister, to you, and thank you for the volunteer tax support. I've seen that in play. I mean, it's amazing. It works for the most vulnerable. And to coming, the same thread. The automatic tax filing. Again, I've seen this work. It's incredible. It's able to connect the most vulnerable with supports. Would you speak to that?
Yes, and actually we have two different efforts in terms of automatic tax filing. So the first one focus on people with basic incomes and who will benefit from benefits. And we try to make their life easier and be able to file their taxes over the phone. So this is something that we're trying. But I think the big one you were thinking about is so we focus. We try to identify people who have not filed for many years, who have never filed, and who would be eligible to benefits because we do care for people. And so last year, we want to increase the number of people that we will reach out to in terms of to allow them to have only a few very easy questions to respond, whether it is by phone, paper, or online, but try to include them into the system. So this is something that is very promising.
And that is the time that we have with the minister. We want to thank Minister Bibeau for coming before Finance Committee and sharing with us all this information to the members' questions. So we highly appreciate it. And now, members, we have an opportunity for the next 30-ish minutes to be with the commissioner and the other officials, assistant commissioners, the directors that are with us here today, as we continue into our third round right now of questions. And in this round with the officials, we're starting with MP Kelly for the first 5 minutes.
Okay, sir. What do we? Will each side get a second speaker, or are you having a hard stop at 5:30?
A hard stop at 5:30. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I may share my time with Mr. Morantz if he has a question. Then, so Mr. Hamilton. You may recall there were some pretty damning Auditor General reports over the years about the department and the call center. Currently, what percentage of calls reach an agent?
Well, I have someone here who can give that estimate, but we focus a little bit more on how long do they have to wait to reach an agent, and right now we're seeing some improvement in our numbers, but frankly they weren't that good earlier. We had a combination of things, a lot of increased demand for calls, and we've had to reduce our staff in light of financial requirements. So those two factors, in addition to, interestingly, a couple of other factors, I'd say increase in the population and newcomers.
Mr. Hamilton, first, I would prefer an answer to my question. You're going into what are beginning to actually sound almost like excuses. We heard from the minister that you have 58,000 employees. Now you're saying you don't have enough to answer the phone, but if you could please answer, if you can't tell me what percentage of callers get through to a person, can you tell Canadians what is the average wait time then, if that's what you're focused on?
Sure, and I'll just try to find, if I can find that number of what percentage, but it's a pretty high percentage that get through. But the problem has been more, people had to wait for a long time. So that's, right now, what we're seeing, just based on the numbers I've looked at recently, people are getting through in minutes rather than hours. So that's very recently.
Like
but there
45
has been
minutes,
a stretch
50
over
minutes? How many
summer,
minutes?
when benefits periods come up, where we've had people have to wait for an hour plus on the phone. But maybe I can, I don't have it as a percentage, but I don't know, Jillian, if you have the percentage.
All right, that's okay. I got a lot of questions, but I think the point. I think I've got my answer now. In the 2017 Auditor General report found that 30% of people that reached an agent were given incorrect information. How have you done in that measurement? Do you have a current number for the people that actually are given accurate, helpful information?
Yes, and I was actually the commissioner in 2017 when I received that report. It was one of the first ones. And the issue there, one could quibble with the Auditor General's methodology, but the basic point was about 70% of people were getting the right answer, 30% weren't. What have we done since then? We actually have a new system that allows us to record calls and so we get to hear what's going on and then take course corrective actions if we need to speak to a particular agent about something. And the end result, along with a few other changes, is right now our accuracy rate is over 95%. Okay.
Okay.
And that's been steady.
But back then, you also thought your accuracy measure was much higher than the Auditor General found. So has this been independently verified from outside of your own department?
I'm not sure if anybody has verified it from outside, but we are very, very confident in it. No. I don't know. And again, I'm looking at Jillian Pranke, who is our Assistant Commissioner. If she wants to add something at some point, we can. But I'm very confident of that number because we now have the recordings.
Okay. I look forward to perhaps another audit on that. But also, in a different report that came out in 2018, the agency will automatically assess taxes on a tax filer if they fail to provide documents within 30 days, unless they have an offshore account or they're an offshore, they have offshore accounts or an offshore filer. In that case, according to the Auditor General, time extensions were granted or the taxes were in many cases just waived. Is that still the practice of the agency?
I would have to get back to you on that because I don't remember that issue from 2018, and unless one of my colleagues...
Let me refresh your memory. For other tax filers, such as those with offshore transaction, we found that the time frame to provide information was sometimes extended for months or even years. Is that still the practice, to extend requests for information for months or years?
Well, the way I would respond to that in general, again, I don't know about the specific question you're raising, is that we do try in our compliance efforts to be as understanding of what's going on. And that would apply to the individual business that you referred to or somebody in the offshore.
How so? When you say on a small business, they got 30 days, and if you can't provide in 30 days, you're done. They just assess the taxes.
Yeah, and again, that's not something I'm very familiar with, so I'd have to check in on whether that's actually true, whether it was true then or whether it's true now. So I don't
Are
know.
you questioning whether it was true then? This is the Auditor
That
General.
is the time now, MP Kelly. That is the time, and now we're on to MP Baker, please.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Just wondering if you could speak, Commissioner, a little bit about something that I raised with the minister at a very high level, which is the fact that we all have seniors living in our respective ridings. I just have one of the older communities in the country, and some of the feedback I get from some of my seniors is that they prefer. I prefer to work electronically, and many folks might, and that's a more efficient way to work and a quicker way to work and a more customer-friendly way to work for a lot of folks. But for some folks, it's not, especially some of my seniors. Could you talk a little bit about, your allocation of customer service and processing resources to that sort of stream of service relative to the electronic stream? Are you maintaining that, or is that being scaled back in any way?
Sure, I'm happy to respond to that, Chair. And there's no doubt that it works better for us and for a lot of people if things run electronically. It can be more efficient, and we try to make that avenue work well and encourage people to use it. But there definitely are a lot of people that don't like that, and this kind of don't leave anyone behind. We have to have our service offerings have to include those people that would rather not deal with us electronically. For example, when tax filing season comes around, we mail out paper forms to people. We can often put in a little suggestion you might want to try electronically, but we do try to accommodate the way that people want to deal with this. And that's kind of the approach we've tried to take in the agency over the last number of years, is that there's no one service channel. So let's provide it in the way that people want and let them choose, kind of service continuum. So we do try to make sure that our paper offerings, or for people that want to interact with us in different ways, we keep those up so that all of the service channels are efficient. We might prefer that somebody goes to a website rather than call us, because that's easier, efficient. But we have call agents. We make sure we try to provide the best service we can on those calls. But we are trying to kind of expand the range of services that we have so that people like you can deal with us electronically, but people like my mother can deal with us via paper, because that's what she prefers.
Yeah. And linked to that is I have some constituents who I know who sometimes come into our office for help to interact with your agency, and in regards to their taxes. And one of the issues that sometimes comes up is folks want to be able to remit payment by check, right? They want to remit to you folks, to the CRA by check, by Canada Post. Is that something that you continue to offer and will continue to offer in the years to come?
I believe so. Now, what's going on in my head is I just recall something about mandatory payments electronically. I'm going to ask Jillian to comment on that. But typically, we would allow people to pay in a form that they choose, they prefer to. Again, we always like things like direct deposit and electronic payments, but maybe I'll turn to Jillian and see if she can just say, where are we at right now on that issue you've raised?
Yes, Mr. Chair, so we still have actually several million citizens that still prefer to make payments by check, individuals, and we still accept check as a method of payment at the Canada Revenue Agency.
So the intention is to continue allowing for that? Like, are there any other than the benefits one might get by using an electronic form of payment, are there any disincentives or fees or anything like that that are put in place for those folks who use? Because I know what happens at the banks, right? Like, let's be frank, right? We all pay enough fees at the banks, but sometimes if you want to get a paper statement now, some financial institutions will charge you for a paper statement or whatever, an extra copy of a statement or what. Like, I'm just trying to get a sense for the sake of my constituents, like, is that the model that you're turning to on some of the more paper-based or systems, payment systems, or disclosure statements. So I'm really thinking about payment by check through Canada Post. That's the example that comes to mind. But I'm just wondering if there's any intention to kind of phase that down in any way, or have people pay a fee for using that sort of service.
So, Mr. Chair, it's very important for the Canada Revenue Agency to ensure that we don't leave any citizen behind. We are a people-first organization, and there are no plans to charge fees for individuals that wish to avail themselves of less digital solutions, be that pay by check, be that file a return by through a paper channel. Both are absolutely acceptable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And not discouraged.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And thank you, MP Baker. And now to MP Samari, please.
Oui, merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, since 2015, before you assumed your job, the number of employees at CRA increased by almost 50%. But apparently the agency only fulfills 48% of its objectives and fails in 52% of cases. That's one of the worst track records in the government. Mr. François Boileau has said that he gets so many complaints about the CRA that he's overwhelmed. He can't even deal with all of them right now or respond to them. Lately, the Journal de Montréal had a series of articles about all the horror stories that people have about service at the agency, and I'm sorry for the interpreters, but they entitled this Bordello or Brothel at the CRA. So at the same time, Radio-Canada has revealed all kinds of fraud schemes that CRA was victim of. When you look at the leaks about tax havens, you trail last when it comes to the countries that were affected by this, even compared to European countries and Revenue Quebec. So do you think that the work of the CRA is up to par? Do you think that your work is up to par? Thank you.
You may not be surprised that I will say, yes, I'm very proud of what we do at the agency. I don't deny some of what you say, that there are challenges out there that are facing us. Yes, we have grown considerably since 2015. We grew a lot in the pandemic. We were asked to do a lot. We had a lot of work dumped on us that wasn't outside of our normal work. I don't mean dumped on us, but it was placed upon us. We had to hire. We had to change our systems to be able to do that. Yes, do problems come from that? Yes, but I'm actually very proud of what we did, and both in terms of getting benefits out the door and ensuring adequate compliance to make sure that the right people got the benefits. So, yes, and we have actually made quite a bit of effort since about 2018 to really become, as Jillian put it, people first, think of the client first, and we have made a lot of progress. Now, a couple of the forces that are working against us, we've certainly seen an increase in the amount of fraud, and that's not just the CRA, that's all businesses, organizations in all countries. But that has placed a strain on our ability to deliver services in a timely way. If you think of it, in a service versus security lens, we spent a lot of time trying to provide great service, do things fast, as I mentioned earlier. We're now looking at the security aspect, and do we need to adjust or recalibrate? And that's something that all jurisdictions are going through. So I won't give you a litany of excuses about why we aren't meeting some of our service standards. I would just suffice to say that we've had a tremendous amount of work that we've had to do. We've delivered the goods where we needed to, with programs that the government wanted to implement. We've been there for them. But yes, we are facing some stresses and strains, and in particular, as financial resources get constrained, that will be upon us. But, we talked about earlier on debt collection. Not everybody in the agency is a debt collector, but we're actually collecting more debt now than we did before. It's just that the size of the debt. There's more debt out there because of the economy growing, because of financial conditions. So, I don't want it to sound like excuses, but there's a lot of factors that influence how our performance goes, and we just keep striving to do the best we can. And I think we have a world-class
Thank you.
organization on our hands.
Thank you. Yeah, we're well past time. And now to MP Davies, please.
Thank you. Mr. Hamilton, I'm actually zooming in from my constituency, and in the break I went to ask my caseworker if she had any questions she wanted me to put to you. She's the person who deals with issues when my constituents have issues with CRA, and the report I got back was that CRA is actually being very responsive, and that they get back to us generally within 5 days and are quite helpful in resolving issues. So I thought I would throw that out. That is kudos to those that work with MP offices. So I wanted you to know that. Mr. Hamilton, the CRA has a duty to report material breaches of taxpayer accounts to the Privacy Commissioner, who then reports directly to Parliament. And in a report to Parliament in June, the Privacy Commissioner reported 71 breaches at the CRA in the fiscal year ending March 31st, 2024. In the previous 3 years, 42 privacy breaches had been reported. However, in answers to questions to the Fifth Estate Radio Canada, the CRA admitted it has been hit with more than 31,468 material privacy breaches from March 2020 to December 2023, affecting 62,000 individual Canadian taxpayers. The Privacy Commissioner noted CRA sent information on these breaches after the March 2024 reporting period, and that he will include the new numbers in next year's annual report. So can you please explain why the department failed to uphold that ministerial responsibility to Parliament in light of the significant underreporting of privacy breaches by the CRA?
Yes, thank you. Happy to respond to that question. But first off, I have to say thank you for the kind words. In my job, I don't get a lot of compliments, so thank you, and we do try to do the best job we can there. The issue of the privacy breaches, we're not happy that we weren't able to provide those to the Privacy Commissioner on a more timely basis, but just to understand the context we were dealing with and what led to that to happen. So in the early days of the pandemic, there was a fairly massive incident that affected not just the CRA, but others. And we had a lot of privacy breaches that came out of that. As the minister indicated, at that time, our focus is on protecting the accounts and protecting the money that's involved. So we did it. It wasn't like we waited for 3 years to do something about it. We were doing a whole bunch of things to make sure we were blocking accounts, we were talking to taxpayers, finding out what happened, because it's not easy to figure out if there was fraud or it wasn't fraud. So that took time, and we worked through. I would note that the OAG looked at this issue, and we reported on this in that OAG report, and said in July 2022 that we had 23,000 cases for 131 billion. So it wasn't like there was nothing being reported, but we did not get them to the Privacy Commissioner in a timely way. We now have done that. So we're all caught up, the 31,000 cases that you referenced, and I would expect that having worked that through, we will now see a more regular strain. We are still getting frauds, we are still getting privacy breaches, but we're working on them, and I think they'll be in a more normal zone. So, and we do have a very not close relationship with the Privacy Commissioner, where we can tell his office of things that are happening informally, so that they can be prepared for it. But our hope now, actually our commitment now, is to be able to get those privacy breaches to the Privacy Commissioner in a more timely way while we work on the cases.
Thank you, MP Davies. And now to MP Hallen, I believe.
Thanks, Chair. Chair, actually, this question is for you. The last committee, we passed a motion asking for we were going to summon the finance minister to appear at this committee before we rise for this fall session, to appear to answer for the fall economic statement. Have you reached out to the finance minister? And if you have you heard back?
That request did come through the committee. And Clerk, did we?
We cannot summon a minister, but I did invite her, yes.
Okay. Have we heard back from her?
I have not.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton. I just want to clear up something with the minister's testimony. The publicly reported number for the write-offs was $4.9 billion. Just a few minutes ago, she said it was $4.3 billion, but I was unclear if that's going to be the number in the public accounts. Can you rule out that the number for the write-offs in the public accounts will be more than $4.3 billion?
Mr. Chair, let me give an opening remark, and then I'll turn to our CFO, Hugo Paget. I think one thing to recognize is we report on the write-offs in the public accounts. The public accounts for this year are not yet there. So, but we do have, there is other information that comes out before the public accounts comes in. So that's where, you know, potentially the 4.3.
I'm not really looking for a
4.9.
huge explanation. I just wanted to know if you could rule it out. So I'm assuming you can't rule it out? You could say that.
What am I not ruling out? Sorry, I just want to make sure I had heard.
Can you rule out that it will not exceed $4.3 billion?
I don't have that information. I'll ask Hugo to.
Yeah, so the amounts that will be reported in the public accounts for write-offs will be $4.382 billion.
All right. Now, I just wanted to ask you about the capital gains tax. It's a bit of a mess. It was introduced in the budget in the spring. There was a Ways and Means motion that got passed in June, and then another one that got introduced in September. We have a minority government that seems to be on its last legs. It's a precarious situation. The government could fall. There are transactions going on. People will presumably be paying you the additional capital gains tax based on the increased inclusion rate whenever that money is due early next year. I'm just curious, what would happen if somebody paid the additional tax and the government fell, a new government came to power and did not bring in implementing legislation? Would that additional tax be refunded to the taxpayers?
Yes, Mr. Chair, just to respond. So the situation you raise, it's not totally unique. We deal with this from time to time, where legislation is put forward or a notice of Ways and Means, and the question is, do we administer it or not before it receives royal assent? In this case, we've been clear that we are going to administer the provision as per the notice of Ways and Means, and people will have choices about how they decide to conduct their affairs and how they decide to file their returns. In the specific case that you've raised, the reason I mentioned the beginning part is at the end, the legislation either gets passed or it doesn't. And then you have to have some sort of reconciliation at that point. So I will ask for Gillian to confirm this, but at that juncture, we would then try to write everything as if the legislation had never came. But Gillian, is that? I just want to make sure I'm right there.
No, that answer is good. I want to go on because my time is quite limited. Just on a completely other matter, and I thank you for that answer. In October, it was reported that there were 330 employees of CRA that inappropriately applied for and received the CERB who are no longer with the agency. These are people who are working that actually scammed the CERB program. I'm just wondering what efforts CRA has taken to collect the monies that were improperly paid to those employees.
Yes, well, our normal collection processes would apply, whether it's our employee or somebody else. If they collected a benefit that they weren't entitled to, then it goes through our collections process and we get the money back. I just want to clarify what we did, because that could have happened anyway through the normal thing. We actually looked to see who did it, investigated, and as a result, terminated a number of employees. Now, we had to go through a process because sometimes people can be coming on temporary basis, be students. So we looked at every case to make sure that it was inappropriate, they weren't eligible, and then we took action. But the collection was going to happen anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Do I have some? A few seconds? Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's good. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, MP Morantz. And now to MP Thompson, please.
Thank you. And Commissioner, other than audit, what compliance measures would CRA use to reduce the tax gap?
Well, Mr. Chair, there's definitely audit is one factor, but we do try to think about getting long-term compliance in place, and that can come in other forms. One, it can be education. working with businesses to make sure they understand their tax liabilities, or individuals, so that they then become more accustomed to paying their taxes, and we would be getting the tax that we needed out of that. So there's a real education part to it that helps us. The other is, and I guess it's partly education, but we have a liaison officer program, which will go out and actually work with newer small businesses to say, okay, you're entering into this business. This is the kind of thing that we see typically that causes tax problems. So again, just having a conversation. It's not an audit. It's just an awareness that these are the kinds of issues, so you should watch out for those. And again, we don't have data to support it, but intuitively, we think that we can get people into the groove of complying with the tax system if they understand it. Because, frankly, the tax system is complicated. A lot of people don't know what problems could arise. So, yes, it's audit. We try to publicize where we have enforcement actions, just to make sure there's a deterrence factor there. But there is a real education, and we talked about, it's more on the benefits side, but just making sure that people are aware of their tax obligations, and making it easier for them to get information so that they do it right. Beefing up our website, having better information material. So those would be things we focus on.
Thank you. And I just want to just circle back for a second to the international group. So when you said with the, I think it was 5 other partners that you referenced to me earlier in the committee, in those meetings, does the work around that you just spoke around, like these efficiencies that you put in place to reach out to businesses, individuals, and also the service standards, which was referenced earlier, and I do have to say in my writing, I have to shout out to the CRA, the local office. They're very good to work with. With these other partners, the work that you're doing, can you measure that or speak to what's happening in Canada versus what you're seeing across those other countries, and probably the rate of tax owed having been written off as well? Like, are there trends that you're seeing that we align with or not?
Yeah, I think, Mr. Chair, in a broad sense, yes. What I get from my counterparts is a lot of the same issues that we're dealing with. Different, some countries are in a better place and others are in a worse place, but generally we're dealing with the same issues. And so issues of the debt, particularly for tax administrations, which not to the same extent Canada, but they were involved in delivering benefits through the pandemic, and now everybody is dealing with the fallout from that. I would say, though, that some of the partners that I talk to are very interested in the issue. How do we get compliance? And we often talk about taxes just happen. How do we make compliance by design, or build it into the system that the compliance could be there? And in extreme cases, some countries, a number of them, have automatic filing where they just fill out the tax form for the person. This is more in the individual space than corporate. And only if the person has a dispute with that would they have to do anything. Otherwise, they just sign it and that's it. So it's a very streamlined process. Now, you need a simple tax system to do that. You can't do it in a complicated way. But yeah, all of the countries are trying to find ways how we can deal better with the people to make it easier for them to file and just make compliance a much easier process rather than a confusing one. Now, businesses, same thing. We have liaison programs. We try to educate businesses, make it easier. You do get people that, even if you make it easy, they don't want to comply, and then we have to make sure we have good enforcement to deal with those.
Still have a minute.
So with a minute left, is there anything that you would like to, the final round, anything in addition that you'd like to say to us, or something that didn't come up that you'd like us to know?
Oh, well, I won't go on too long. Don't worry. I just want to return. It was an important issue that we talked about on fraud, and I just want to say that there are a number of things that we're doing within the agency, and not perfect. And we're just like any other organization. We're dealing with some very creative and aggressive people. But we have set up in the agency a separate branch on security that is dealing both proactively and reactively, trying to prevent and identify where there are fraud risks. And then when we do that, hopefully we can prevent it from happening. But if it happens, then we take action right away and we close down that vector to protect the accounts, make sure the individuals are protected, make sure we protect the Treasury as much as we can. And this is an agency-wide effort. So we are very devoted to it. I can't say we're perfect again, but the effort is there, and I think relative to other organizations I know of, we're doing a very good job, both proactively and reactively. I don't think there's anything else I really wanted to add other than we talked about whistleblowers. My goal is to make sure that if people see something going on in the agency that they don't like, they feel free to raise it. Okay. Now we do have, as the minister said, we can't have people giving out taxpayer information. We have to be concerned about that. But we do have mechanisms in place for if you see something, go to your manager. We have an anonymous whistleblower program within the agency. There's one that operates at the federal government wide, and if that all fails, they should come to me and tell me. And I would note that in the very latest public sector survey, actually the agency scored quite well in
Point of
terms
order,
of,
Mr.
I
Chair.
feel, bringing my complaint forward without the fear of reprisal. So
Point of
we were-
order?
we
Yeah,
were
sorry,
higher than the
I
average.
apologize for
Yeah.
cutting in.
Which, again, isn't total success, but I think
Is
it's
it
a good
a
sign.
point of
for
order?
us. So
Yeah.
It's
those
a
are
point.
my priorities.
It's a point of order, and I appreciate the commissioner's comments, but we're now short of time, and I know you have a hard stop at 5:30. We've waited 4 months. I'm going to
So,
request
it's-
that we can submit some questions
It was a
in
point
writing.
of order right now. So
Well, I'm
it's
gonna.
not a point of order.
It's nice to
MP Chambers.
Well, listen, we're
we'll-
we're shortening the meeting unnecessarily when we have resources. So I'm going to request that we can submit some questions in writing to the officials so that we can get answers back, which I think is a normal practice. Is that fair?
Members? Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Thank you.
So those will come to you in writing, Commissioner. But we do want to thank the Commissioner, Assistant Commissioners, Directors, all the officials that are with us here today, as well as the Minister that was with us for the first hour. Thanks for coming before Finance Committee. As you can see, members were very eager to ask many questions, and you will get some also in writing through email. So on that, members, shall we adjourn? We're adjourned.